All right, welcome to Cymex channel. Today I want to talk about the new version 3 of Orgraph that got put on Melpa yesterday. So Orgraph, just for like a brief background, is a project I started back in 2014 for interacting with and inserting citations and cross-references into org mode files that I use for writing technical and scientific documents. And once we have those in there, to export those with formatted bibliographies and formatted cross-references. So Orgraph you can get from Melpa, just package install it, or you can go to the Orgraph GitHub repo to get the source code. So there's a couple of big changes in version 3 that are kind of breaking changes if you've been using Orgraph for a while. So I want to go through what a few of those are. They're mostly in the variable setup and how we do it. So previously, Orgraph had a bunch of Orgraph-specific variables that would determine what bibliography files you used, where the PDF library was, where your notes were, and how that worked. And what I've done in version 3 is get rid of all of those and just rely on bibtech completion variables. Most of the old version was shadowing these variables or duplicating them anyway. So I just decided to get rid of them and rely exclusively on bibtech completion for all the candidates and things like that. So anywhere you had like the Orgraph default bibliography, you need to replace it with bibtech completion bibliography. And what was previously the PDF directory is now the library path. And then similarly, wherever the notes were is now the bibtech completion notes. And you can use bibtech completion notes variables to have single files or multiple files, etc. So this is how I have mine set up. I use some additional search fields because I often will define keywords in my bibtech entries, and you can use the template here to format exactly how you want to see your candidates. We'll see what those look like. So you can even specify for different types in here. And then you can use your own function for opening your PDFs. I just here call open, so it uses whatever my computer system has set up. So those are the bibtech completion things that you have set up. And then down here, I have in use package Orgraph, I specify the load path because it's in a special place. And then I have a couple more requires. I took out, I want to say, all of the key bindings from Orgraph. That was somewhat contentious with people that I was defining those, so I took them out, and now you have to define your own key bindings for inserting links. And I use Control-C right bracket, but you can set it to whatever you want. And then finally, I got rid of all the backends but Helm bibtech and Ivy bibtech. And maybe good news for some people, those no longer get automatically installed. If you use Helm bibtech, you have to install Helm and Helm bibtech. And if you use Ivy bibtech, you have to install that separately. So this demo will use Ivy because that's the preferred system that I've been using for a long time, but you could also use Helm in the same way. All right, and then I like to require these. These are optional. They're certainly not necessary. So this is, you can find all of this on the GitHub repo to figure out how you would set it up. And what I want to show you today is how it works for me, because that is what I expect it should work for you. And if you see something super different, then something's not working exactly the way that I imagined. Okay, so let's talk about how I use it and what it's good for. So I'm going to assume you have a bibtech file around and you want to use it to insert some citations. So for me, what that looks like is I'm writing along here, my cursor's like here, and I want to put it in a citation. So I would just type Control-C right bracket, and then I will get a list of things down here. And let's look for, I don't know, let's say Dominic, and maybe Orgraph reference manual here, and then I can just press enter, and I'll do that in a second. but I'll highlight a few points in here. One is this little symbol over here means that I have a PDF somewhere and I could open it. And sometimes there will be another symbol here that indicates there's a notes, probably like a little pencil or something. So I'll press enter and in we get a site link. Now these are the old-fashioned org mode links customized for citations, and the ampersand, or the whatever this little and sign here is the new version 3 syntax, and I'll show you what that allows us to do in a couple of examples. Same as before, if you hover over this, you can see that we get a tooltip, and if I click on this, then I get this nice little menu down here where I can open the BibTeX entry, open a PDF if it exists, notes, open a URL. We can search for things that are related on the internet or email this reference to someone. We have a couple of copy options. We can copy the BibTeX entry or the key or a formatted string, or I like to use the org heading sometimes when I'm taking notes. And I'll talk about editing, but we can insert another citation, we can change the type, delete it, or replace the citation at point. And then there's some navigation keys over here that are not helpful yet. So we could say if I just press O here, this will jump directly to that entry, and you can do what you want with it from there. All right, so that takes care of like tooltips and actions. We can do multiple citations. So going back here, let's see what I have under here in org mode. These are all papers that I've tagged with org mode. And you can do a bunch of things with Ivy, but I'll just show you that I can mark a couple of these. Here I press Alt-Tab. That's a key binding I use in Simax. And now if I press Enter, it will insert all 4 of those in order. And I see these are all the same year, so let me add a couple more. Let's do these. So we have now lots of years that are in here. Now, if I was to press enter on this, I get a set of actions, and let's look at the edit one. Here I can press the up arrow, and it's going to sort these by year. So if I do that, you see it puts all of the early years first, and these go in order, and all the later years go at the end. So that's pretty handy, and if I want to rearrange these from a key map, I just press Shift right and left, and I can move them around. And if I get here and I want to sort this from the keyboard, I just press Shift up, and it does that automatically for me. So probably many of these have the same kind of key binding. So to change the type, I just press T here, and I get a completion menu for all of the LaTeX citation commands that you could probably imagine having. This should support everything in NatBib and BibLaTeX, and you just pick one and it will change the type that is right there. And then if I want to delete this, since I'm on site author, I can just press D and it will delete. It'll ask me which key I want to delete, and then I can just pick one and get rid of it. So that's pretty handy, and because it's Ivy, there's other ways to do this. So I can do something like this, and let's say I want to insert the currently selected one. I just press Control Enter, and it inserts it, and then I can go down and do another one, and then I could go here and press, I think, maybe Shift Enter, and eventually when I'm done, I just press Super Enter, and then it ends. So there's lots of things you can do there that are nice. And maybe the last thing I'll show you is from here. Instead of just inserting one of these, let's look at this one. I type Alt-O and Ivy, and it gives me a set of menus that I can insert a BibTeX key or open the URL, or maybe if I press P, it will open a PDF for me, and you can see that it gets to the PDF very quickly and easily. So those are all kinds of things that I find extremely helpful. And, I don't remember, in a week, I won't remember what this is, so I can just hover over it and see what it is. And you can see even in the tooltip, this tells me I have a PDF of this one, and then I don't have a PDF of this one. So I might click on this and press U, and it will take me to a URL that I can figure out what's happening in that reference. So there's lots of ways I could look at this. Maybe let's do one more. Let's see WG, and this will search for it and find it in Google Scholar. And then from here you can do anything you want to do in Google Scholar. Let's see, is there any other things we might want to look at in here? Maybe WB will open in Biblio, and then I can do a search in Archive for that and see what kinds of things come up over here. So lots of very convenient, right at your fingertip navigation of the references and things to do with them. All right, so that is the main reason that I came up with Orgraph in the first place, but the second place is inserting cross-references. So the citations are pretty crucial because typically a paper will have somewhere between 40 and 80 references that you need to keep track of. But there also will be things like see this table for something. So to make that super easy, it looks kind of like this. I'll just write table here. I would type Control-U, C, right bracket, and it will give me down here a little completion on the name of the table or this equation here. So if I put data here, I'll just press enter, and then it will ask me for that, and I can now have a link that is a pointer to this table here. And if you highlight or mouse over it, you get a tooltip that shows you the context. And let's look at the other one. If we put this in, then we can choose equation ref, and this now is going to be a reference to an equation that will get rendered in a different way. All right, so those are things that I do all the time. These, if you click on this, it will jump to the actual place. I don't recall if I have a particular Hydra for like multiple things that you might want to do on here. But there are other ways to change this data type that maybe we could think about in a future one. If you remember seeing what popped up real quick, there are all these different kinds of references that you can put, and it shouldn't be popping up like this right now. There's some new feature I added this morning or yesterday to try to get access to these quickly. It should be just putting the default in unless you choose the different kind, but you can have a page ref or a name ref or an auto ref, and it will automatically put in that type. All right, so if you're a longtime user of Orgraph, none of this is particularly new, probably. And today I want to show you that we have full support for NatBib and BiblioTeX citations. And they differ a little bit, and maybe this is a reasonable time to talk a little bit about the new orgsite syntax that is now part of org mode 9.5. So that syntax introduces a new org element for citations in org mode. And I looked at it in a lot of depth back in August and wrote Orgraph cite as a way to interact with that in a similar fashion to this. But eventually I came around to think that I really like that these cross-references exist and look mostly like what you would write in LaTeX. And I really like that these cite commands are almost exactly the same as you would use in LaTeX. And that's not the case with the current orgsite implementations. They use a cite/style variant that doesn't look like these and doesn't map directly onto them the way I'm used to. And they also, the orgsite doesn't do cross-referencing at all, and so I decided to keep Orgraph links around because they look like LaTeX, and that's the main reason that I use them. So that's why we have this style and orgsite. The main benefit of the orgsite is it's built in, so if you don't want to use Orgraph, you just don't have to. But it does a lot of things, including glossaries and indexes and cross-references and things that are largely viewed to be out of the scope of the orgsite syntax. So the reason I use the ampersand here is also to make sure that when you use this, it's just very clear that you're not using the orgsite syntax, which uses the ampersand or the at symbol. All right, so let's look at what kinds of things are possible. So I'm going to look at these two examples. These are in the GitHub repo, but probably not in the Melpa distribution, if I had to guess. All right, so this is what some of these citations can look like. We have here, this is going to be a basic example that uses NatBib by default and BibTeX. So up here I have a couple of headers. I guess I might have an index. Yeah, I guess I have an index down here. So we'll ignore what happens with those. Here we have some typical kinds of citations. Here I have some tables with some references. And down here we have some cross-references, including the cleverref packages and Autoref, is that in here maybe? And then we have to specify a bibliography style, and we have to specify a bibliography. So these are all standard things, and here's some miscellaneous links that are defined in Orgraph: a list of tables, list of figures, we'll print the index, and now this is interesting. Why do we have two of these? Maybe I'll just get rid of this one. And now we'll look at what happens when we export this to a PDF. So I made a link here just so I could click on it. And my PDF process is set up to run BibTeX and make index in this example. So let me click it. It takes a little while because it generates the LaTeX file and then runs it through LaTeX and then runs it through BibTeX, runs make index, etc. And over here is what the result looks like. Let's see if I can make it big enough. Oh, it didn't work. Maybe I took the wrong one out. Let's try that again. Okay. So I had the wrong bibliography, and you saw the question marks here. So here we're using the author date BibTeX style, and this references here. These are also clickable. So here, if I tooltip on it, you can see it tells me the file exists. And it's kind of nice. If I get rid of this, it turns red to indicate that it doesn't exist. And this should have a tooltip on it, but it doesn't tell me anything particularly interesting. Okay, so we get our nicely formatted author name. This was like a page number. This is a citation. Our cross-references all look good. Here is the name ref that gives us the caption. There's our figure. Here are a couple of equations, so this automatically gets parenthesized. And then if you use cleverref, let's look back here. If you look here on the right-hand side, I don't say the word section, table, figure, equation at all, and these are the capitalized versions. So cleverref automatically figures out what you're referencing and puts it in there, which is really nice. I'll show you in a couple of videos that there's now a reference processor in Orgraph that will do this for non-LaTeX exports, which is pretty nice. Here's our list of tables, list of figures, and the index that is automatically created for us. All right, so that is the kind of base example for using NatBib, and this is actually the kind of application I use the most of all, because most of the journals that I use require me to use BibTeX, and it's simple, and that's what we use. However, one of the reasons why the new syntax in org mode was developed is that in version 2 it was really limited how you could apply pre-notes and post-notes on citations. So I kind of hijacked the link syntax to put the pre-note and post-note in the description of a link separated by a double colon. And that only really worked for one reference, and wasn't really good for what people do in bibliotech, in the humanities and social sciences especially. So I'll show you what that really means is down here you can see that we have a citation with a global prefix note. This is a prefix on this citation here with a post note that says see page 3. And then we have another one that has prefix and post note. And then we have a global suffix. So this kind of syntax is really common and very well supported with Bibliotech, but was not supported in version 2 of Orgraph in this form. And the new site syntax in org mode allows you to write things like this. And it turns out that we can support that fully in the org links that we use in Orgraph as well. So that's one of the new features, that we can write pre-notes and post-notes and have global prefixes and global suffixes, and then use that with Bibliotech to do that. So here's the setup for this now. We use the Bibliotech package and specify the author year style up here. And then instead of having my bibliography link, we have to add the bib resource up here for in the LaTeX header for Bibliotech. And then where you want the bibliography to be stored, you put print bibliography. And so we have a print bibliography link that it gets expanded into the bibliography. And then the other critical point is that when you use Bibliotech, you have to have a PDF process that uses Bibliotech to build the PDF. And so here I just let bind it here because I don't normally use Bibliotech, but we just have a LaTeX make command that uses PDF. This specifies the LaTeX compiler. Here we use bibtech. -bibtech will make it run Bibliotech because it's smart that way. And we should just go ahead and I'll go ahead and run this and see what comes up. So it's processing along, and then eventually it finishes, and we get this PDF that comes here. And so you can see here's our author year style. Here's the pre-note, post-note. So you can see here it integrates this, see this person in this year, and see here with this. And it also works with multiple keys. And then if you want to do it with multiple sites that have individual notes, here's an example of how that gets rendered. And here's an example of, so this is a parenthetical site, so the whole thing is in parentheses. And here's an example that is non-parenthetical, so it's not in parentheses. And then similarly down here, we have beautifully rendered bibliography in this author year style. So I'm pretty excited that I was able to figure out how to support all of this for different styles of citations. And that brings me to basically the end of what I wanted to talk about today. Tomorrow I'm going to talk about the non-LaTeX exports and the integration of the CSL exporter that allows us to take the same document and make beautifully rendered HTML files or open document files that look like Microsoft Word and have properly formatted citations and bibliographies in them. Then the day after that, I'm going to talk about the reference processor, because that brings the beauty of cleverref and Autoref and cross-reference handling that LaTeX does so well also to HTML and open document formats. And then there's a third topic that I want to talk about that is an alternate to the CSL processor that builds off of LaTeX. And then I can't remember if there's another one after that. But there's a lot to talk about in what is built into Orgraph at this point. All right, so more about Orgraph. If you are impatient for me to walk through it, the Orgraph help command will open the Orgraph manual, and Every once in a while I have to kind of toggle visual line mode here to make that work. But this is a whole manual that talks about the introduction to Orgraph. I should mention you can use the old version 2 syntax. That's perfectly fine. It recognizes 2 and 3, and you can even mix them in a document if you want. That's not a big problem. What you should not do is mix the orgsite syntax and orgraph syntax. They are totally independent citation processors and will surely not do what you want. And similar, I guess you shouldn't define any site links with a slash in them, because that will surely be confusing to orgsite in there. But otherwise, you can find all of the configuration information. You can also find information about configuring it to use Helm BibTeX, and you can find lots of information about some of the key bindings, pre-post text support. I guess up here, let's go back and show you some of the navigation. So if I'm on here, I can press Control to jump around with the arrow buttons like this. And now we can do the navigation and press V. And it will give me a little AV selector for every key. So if I want to jump up here, I can just type FJ. So that's probably enough for the things today. Maybe the other topic I might talk about is some of the DOI utilities for managing your BibTeX files in there. That reminds me, looking at these results, these don't get rendered on the GitHub site, so maybe after this I will talk about it. Or fix that and push it out so that you can see these things on GitHub. All right, so let's see. I don't know if there's too many people that are watching. Does anybody online have a question? I see a couple. Thanks for making the video and for the package. You're welcome. Welcome, I guess, MF YouTube. All right, well, I hope you'll come back and see what we can do with the CSL exporter. And till then, have a good evening, and see you next time.